Thank you very much. Today's talk is about whether Britain should continue to have a monarchy or whether we should follow the footsteps of other countries and transition to an elected head of state. Now, my starting point is that the Queen is a rather nice person, as far as I know. For much of her 6 decades or more on the throne, she's been pretty harmless and inoffensive. Even to the point, some people say, of being rather grey and dull. So the problem is not Elizabeth II personally. This is not about her. It's about the institution of monarchy. So my gripe is with the institution, not the office holder. To me, monarchy is a historical and constitutional anachronism. It's a relic from a bygone, feudal, aristocratic past. And as a modern democracy, I think Britain needs to move on. We need to move beyond the historic institutions to institutions that are compatible with democratic and human rights values. In my view, and some may find it disagreeable, an elected head of state is preferable to an unelected head of state. We have a fairly nice head of state, Queen Elizabeth II. But I don't think her holding this post by virtue of birth and tradition is compatible with democracy or modernity. Let's look at it. Monarchy is based upon inherited power, wealth, and status, not on merit or on democratic choice. Deference is enshrined. Equality and accountability are spurned in favour of the pomp and privilege of royalism. On top of that, with all their trappings of aristocratic luxury, the royals often act like they're living in the 15th century, not the 21st. They have 6 palaces and about 700 servants who wait on them hand and foot. Now, I'm not saying they should have no helpers or assistants. Of course they should. But 700! 6 palaces! That to me is beyond necessity, even for royals. It's far too much extravagance in an age when everybody else has been living through so much austerity and belt-tightening. It has been and continues to be a burden on the taxpayer at a time of public spending cuts. Now, of course, we should fund the head of state. A head of state should be funded like the Prime Minister or any other state official, but not to the extent that the royal family is currently funded. They are a very wealthy family. The Queen is one of the richest people in the world. She has a personal wealth which is independent of her wealth as head of state. And much of that wealth, I have to say, has been looted through successive feudal wars and through colonialism. Much of the wealth has been extracted by quite shocking conditions of servitude in Britain's former colonies in Africa, the Caribbean, Asia, and the Pacific. So I don't think that the taxpayer ought to be funding the royals to the extent it does, even if we decide to continue with the royal family. They are quite well off enough in their own personal right to bear a higher personal burden. One of the things that strikes me as being so fundamentally wrong with the monarchy is that its elitist values, well, the elitist values in the monarchical system, they implicitly state, or in effect accord, that the most stupid, immoral royal person is, by virtue of the family into which they're born, more fit to be head of state than the wisest, most ethical commoner. That doesn't seem right to me. Because under the inherited system, it's Buchan's turn. It's the firstborn, whoever they are, whether they're good or bad. You can't replace them. They are there for life. That's the whole purpose or intention of monarchy. It is a job for life, no matter how badly or appallingly they behave. The Queen has, for the most part of her rule, been a pretty good monarch. Very few people will have substantive things to say, although I will mention a few points later on. But imagine having to put up with a king like the insensitive, gaffe-prone Prince Philip, or the Nazi-sympathising King Edward VIII. In those circumstances, we couldn't remove them. We have to just live with them. So that's one of the big flaws, the lack of accountability, the lack of ability to recall a person who's not doing the job or not doing it well. But in addition, sadly, we also have a system of monarchy that is implicitly racist and based upon religious intolerance. So, for example, no Catholic person or person married to a Catholic can inherit the British throne and be our head of state. The monarch is automatically the supreme governor of the Church of England. And indeed, by tradition, they have to be a member of that particular faith. And this makes royal succession problematic, if not impossible, for atheists, Muslims, Buddhists, Judaists, Hindus, and Sikhs. I say that the monarchy is racist by default. For the foreseeable future, a black Briton can never be our monarch and head of state. So everybody rejoiced when Barack Obama became the American head of state. That was only possible because there was an election for the head of state, the president. Here we don't have that. In Britain, the position of king or queen, head of state, is reserved for the white Windsor family and their descendants. Until a future first in line marries a non-white person, Afro-Caribbean, African and Asian people are automatically excluded from being the symbolic head of our nation. That strikes me as very, very offensive. The idea that the head of state position is automatically foreclosed for decades and decades to come, at least, to non-white people who make up part of our community and society. I think that's wrong. Now, some people point out, well, Prince Harry is about to marry Meghan Markle, who's not white. But of course, I think he's fourth in line, and there's no chance that they or their children will be head of state. So that doesn't change anything at all. Still, the prerogative of head of state and future monarch relies with the all-white Windsor family. Right now, with Prince William, eventually after Prince Charles, and after Prince William, Prince George. It's also worth pointing out that the Queen sometimes seems out of touch with modern multicultural Britain. As you know, to her great credit, she's visited many, many charities and community groups over her 6 decades of rule. But not, as far as I know, any black or LGBT ones. Why is that? Why is it that she has apparently taken a decision, perhaps under the pressure from advisors, but she's ultimately responsible, to not visit or support LGBT and black charities? Now, I very much doubt that Queen Elizabeth is a raging homophobe. but nor do I think she's gay friendly. So not once in her 68 years, I think, on the throne, has she publicly acknowledged the existence of the LGBT community or gay members of her own royal family. She's never once acknowledged that. While she has spoken approvingly of the UK's many races and faiths, for more than 6 decades, she's ignored gay Britons. What kind of message does that send? For me, as a gay man, it sends the signal that we are the unspeakable ones, the people she cannot bear to acknowledge or mention in public. If she had treated black or Asian Britons in the same way, she'd be denounced as a racist. So why the double standard? Why should she treat LGBT Britons different from black Britons? Astonishingly, since she became Queen in 1952, the words gay and lesbian have never publicly passed her lips. There is no record of her ever speaking them. Even when she announced plans for gay law reform in her Queen's speeches in Parliament, she did not use the words lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. She found another form of wording to get around it. It looks like, or it feels like, that mentioning LGBT people is beneath the dignity of the monarch. Republicans want an elected head of state, chosen by and for the people, accountable to the people, and replaceable by the people if they fail to live up to the job. Royalists say that, well, look at presidents around the world. They say that monarchy is nevertheless preferable. Well, compared to an executive-style president, like the US or the French have, I agree that presidential systems can be deeply flawed. So, together with most Republicans, I favour not a US or French-style president, but a low-cost, purely ceremonial elected president like they have in Ireland, which costs about 1/20th of the official costs of our royal family. A president wouldn't have to be a politician. People think, oh, we'll have Tony Blair or Richard Branson, a businessman. No, you could have someone completely different, like Mary Robinson in Ireland. She had a political past, but she was basically a human rights lawyer and defender, and was above and beyond politics. She was a unifying symbol. She was the most popular Irish president ever. And she did things that our Queen never did. She visited asylum and refugee centres, LGBT organisations, black and ethnic minority groups. She made a point of reaching out to every sector of Irish society so that no one felt excluded. And there are people in Britain that could be a good president. I think of someone like Helena Kennedy, QC, one of our most revered human rights lawyers. She'd be fantastic. She's not a party political person. She's got a history and tradition of equality and human rights. So those are the options. There are many others we could choose: authors, scientists, playwrights. There are lots of people we could have other than politicians. So if we did have an elected head of state, it would ensure that we, the people, are sovereign, not the royals. It would give us the very important safeguard that if we don't like our head of state, we could elect a new one. And indeed, the Queen could stand for election, or Prince Charles or Prince William, they could stand for election. And if they won, which they might, I would accept the result. My point is, let the people decide. Thank you.